let us begin this module by defining the concept of poverty, inequality and unemployment. Poverty is a multi-dimensional concept and is pronounced deprivation in well-being when people are unable to get access to the basic necessities of life. This situation is referred to as poverty. This deprivation from basic necessities includes insufficiency of food, shelter and clothing. In other words, poverty refers to a state of deprivation where there is a lack of essential needs for subsistence. Inequality is the fundamental disparity that allows one person in a certain materialistic choices while disabling other individuals at the very same choice. Inequality interests authors for two reasons. First, ethical and philosophical grounds are responsible for the aversion to inequality per se. Second, if inequality does not interest us at all at the intrinsic level, we may pay heed to it at a functional level. That is, it may not be important by itself, but because it has an impact on other economic features that you care about it, such as growth. Unemployment is defined by ILO as the happening of an event wherein people have no jobs and have actively looked for it within the past 4 weeks, or unemployment can be regarded as a situation wherein workers in the labor force of a country who are eligible for working and willful want to work but cannot find employment. After studying this module, you will be able to learn that all three heads are interrelated and widespread. Understand that these are the social evils, if they are not abandoned, will continue to spread like an epidemic and eat the entire fabric of the country. Understand the solutions to all the three that are sustainable and self-developed. Learn the utilization of a country's resources and how it plays an important role. Now, let us discuss about the reasons to measure poverty. Reasons to measure poverty are as follows: to keep poor people on the agenda, to be able to identify poor people so as to be able to target the appropriate interventions, to monitor and evaluate projects and policy interventions geared to the poor people, to evaluate the effectiveness of institutions whose goal is to help the poor people. There are different approaches to poverty which are described below. First, the objective poverty, a condition in which individuals' basic needs are uncovered and unmet, and there is a dearth of basic goods and services which include food, housing and clothing and such facilities, and this is known as absolute poverty. Relative poverty refers to the phenomenon of poverty with respect to the society under study. From this perspective, when a person is in a disadvantaged situation, either financially or socially, with regard to the other people in his own or their own environment, then he or she is considered to be a poor person. Subjective poverty. It analyzes the subjective poverty information on the opinion of the individuals or the households and their situation, and this way of understanding poverty influences the subjective view that households have their financial situation as opposed to the objective focus that is only uses observable and measurable variables. Multidimensional deprivation. Multidimensional deprivation is closely related to social exclusion and is related to deprivation or the lack of access to certain goods and services considered necessary by society, whether a basic need or not. Poverty is measured with non-monetary variables and deprivation indicators using breakdowns of these indicators to construct poverty measures. This type of multidimensional deprivation has also been called severe poverty. Now, let us discuss about some axioms which should be satisfied by a good index of poverty. Sain in 1997 proposed that any good index of poverty should satisfy at least 3 basic axioms, which are as follows. Focus. Focus axiom states that poverty measure should be independent of the income distribution of the non-poor. It should keep focus only on the poor. Monotonicity. It states that the poverty measure should rise or fall if there is a rise or fall in the income of a poor person. Weak transfer axiom. It states that the pure transfer of income from poor person to any less poor person should raise the poverty measure. We shall now discuss about some of the measures of poverty. First of all, we have the head count ratio. This is equal to HCR is equal to Q upon N, where Q is the number below the poverty line and N is the population. It measures the extent of poverty but ignores the depth. It violates both monotonicity and the WTA, and it encourages policies directed at those just below the poverty line, even if they make poorer persons worse off. Poverty gap ratio PGI is equal to 1 upon n sigma j ranging from 1 to n bracket z minus yj divided by z bracket closed, where z is the absolute poverty line, yj is the income of person j, and n is the population. It measures the total income shortfall of the poor and also measures depth of poverty. It satisfies monotonicity but violates WTA. 3. We have another measure called Foster, Greer and Thorbecke, FGT for short, index. This is a bit complicated. P alpha is equal to 1 upon n sigma I ranging from 1 to h bracket yp minus y whole to the power of alpha divided by yp. where the individual indices within the family are derived by substituting different values of the parameter alpha in the above equation. Yp is the absolute poverty line, Yi is the income of person I, and H is the number of persons and N is the population. Now, if alpha is equal to 0, then P0 is the head count ratio. If alpha is equal to 1, then P1 is the poverty gap ratio. If alpha is equal to 2, then P2 is squared poverty ratio gap SPG. SPG measures the severity of poverty and satisfies all three axioms. We further discuss about the trends in poverty in India. The Indian poverty line. Old method measures the absolute poverty in terms of minimum level of monthly per capita expenditure MPCE until Tendulkar expert group in 2009 defined the poverty line. It was based on a methodology proposed by Alag Committee report in 1979. The level of MPCE that allowed households to meet calorie norms established in early 1970s. The calorie norms were 2400 kilocalories per day per person in urban areas and 2400 kilocalories per person per day in rural areas. The bundle of goods consumed by the households at the poverty line are the poverty line baskets. The calorie norm was converted into money terms using data from the 1973-74 NSS Consumer Expenditure Survey. On this basis, poverty line was approximately rupees 49 per capita per month in rural areas and rupees 57 per capita per month in urban areas in 1973-74. For later years, these poverty lines were updated by various price indices. After the report of Lakdawala expert group in 1993, the poverty lines were translated into state-wise poverty lines using state-specific consumer price indices and thereafter updated annually using state-wise CPI for urban workers and agricultural workers for rural areas. The head count ratio and other poverty measures were obtained from these updated poverty lines using state-wise distribution of household MPCE from each year's CES separately for urban and rural. The major feature and recommendations of the Tendulkar Expert Group Report 2009 are as follows. Abandon calorie norms and measure poverty as consumption deprivation rather than calorie deprivation. Instead of separate poverty norms for rural and urban, use a single poverty line basket based on the consumption pattern at the existing urban poverty line of 2004-05 because 1. Revised poverty lines should be based on some generally acceptable aspects of current practices. 2. Existing urban HCR headcount ratio is less controversial than rural and is close to anthropometric measure for malnutrition, while rural head count ratio is much lower. Urban poverty line represents a better and preferable living standard as compared to the rural. PLB, based on actual consumption pattern observed in 2004-5, is more relevant than the updating the 1973-74 PLB. Tendulkar panel stipulated a benchmark daily per capita expenditure of rupees 27 for rural areas and rupees 33 for urban areas. Tendulkar committee recommendation was extremely low and unrealistic. So the government constituted a new committee. The new reference poverty line was rupees 579 MPCE, given the head count ratio of 37.2 in 2004-5 against 27.5% by the old method. The Rangarajan Expert Group Report 2014. Rangarajan Expert Group Report rejects the Tendulkar Group's recommendations of a single All India PLB and returns to the earlier approach with separate rural and urban PLs based on MPCE level adequate to meet the revised nutritional norms, but with the additional allowance for minimum non-food consumption. 2010 ICMR norms for each age, sex, activity are used for minimum protein and fat requirements in addition to calories. The new calorie norms based on 2010 ICMR new calorie norms are 2155 kilocalories per person per day for rural areas and 2090 kilocalories per person per day for urban areas. These are lower than the 1968 norms because 1. Calorie requirements have fallen for each age, gender, activity because of lifestyle changes. This accounts for 60% of the reduction. Shift in the structure of the population from heavy towards moderate and sedentary occupations accounts for the rest of the 40% of the reduction. The report further reduces these norms by 10%, therefore, resulting poverty lines for 2011-12 MCPE of rupees 972 for the rural areas and 1407 for the urban areas. These are respectively 19 and 47% higher than those calculated from Tendulkar method for the same year. Criticism of the Rangarajan report. It should have proposed a multi-dimensional deprivation measure instead of a level consumption expenditure. It should have tried to reconcile NAS and NSS consumption figures instead of rejecting NAS. The revised ICMR calorie norms are not relevant for people at the poverty line. Determination of minimum food expenditure based on PLB of the household meeting all three nutritional norms ignores diversity of dietary patterns in India. At present, the government constituted a 14-member task force under Arvind Panagria, Vice Chairman Niti Aayog, to define a more realistic poverty line. We will now talk about the trends in inequality. Inequality is the fundamental disparity that allows one person certain materialistic choices while disabling other individuals of the very same choices. Inequality interests authors for two reasons. First, ethical and philosophical grounds are responsible for aversion to inequality per se. Second, if inequality does not interest us at the intrinsic level, we may pay heed to it at the functional level. It may not be important for us by itself, but because it has an impact on other economic features that we care about, such as growth. Now, there are some preliminary observations. Difference between stock and flow. Income is a flow per unit of time. Asset is a stock at a point of time. Assets are the accumulation of past income flows. Economic mobility important to measure the dispersion of income at a point of time. Short term versus long term consideration. Inequality in current income may be harmless, but from an ethical point of view, and from the point of view of its effects on the economy, provided that the inequality is temporary. For example, suppose in a society that some earn rupees or dollars 2000 per month, while some others earn 3000 per month, there is a perfect immobility. In society B, some earn 1000 per month, whereas others earn 4000 per month, but people exchange jobs every month. At any one point of time, A shows up more equal, but in a society B, the average annual earnings are the same for everyone. Next, we shall discuss about functional and personal distribution of income. It may also be of interest to know not only how much people earn, but how they earn it. This is the distinction between functional and personal income distribution. If we look at the diagram, then the first set of arrows describe how income is generated from the production process. The production involves labor for which wages are paid. Similarly, rent to the landowners and interest to the capital owners. In simple words, returns to different factors of production is a functional distribution of income. The second set of arrows tells us how different categories of income are distributed amongst households. The direction and the magnitude of these flows depend upon who owns the factors of production. By combining the functional distribution of income with the distribution of ownership, it gives us the personal distribution of income. Moving to the discussion about measuring economic inequality, let us consider N, the number of individuals in the economy, yi, the income received by individual I, and the income distribution to be y1, y2 and up to yn. The inequalities correspondingly are the set I within brackets y1, y2, y3, yn. 4 criteria for inequality measurement. 1. Anonymity principle, sometimes called the symmetry principle, which says that it does not matter who receives the income. Permutations of incomes among people should not matter for the inequality judgments. This means that if we can always arrange the income distribution of n people such that y1 is less than y2 is less than y3 and so on up to yn, where y is the income, then we have the population principle, which says that the cloning the entire population and their income should not change inequality. according to this principle, population size does not matter. All that matters are the proportions of the population that earn different levels of income. For example, suppose we arrange and categorize the income so that we can determine the percentage of the population earning incomes in each category, then we could have certain income ranges like 0 to 200, the percentage is 8%, 201 to 400, it is 30%, 401 to 600, it is 33%, 601 to 800, it is 25%, and 901 and above, it is 4%. Now, here the inequality measurement purposes, we do not know and do not care how many people live in the country or who they are. This is the anonymity principle. All that we are caring about is the percentage of the population earning different levels of income. Formally, we can state this principle as I of y1, y2, y3, yn is equal to I of y1, y2, y3, yn further to y1, y2, yn, where I is the inequality and y is the income. Relative income principle, which says that only relative incomes and not the absolute level of these incomes matters. For example, an income distribution over two people of 500 and 1000 has the same inequality as 2000 and 4000, and regardless of the currency and the incomes are in which the incomes are denominated. Formally, we can state this as the principle I of y1, y2, y3, yn is equal to I of delta y1, delta y2, delta y3, delta yn, where I is the inequality and delta is the constant parameter. The Dalton principle, also known as the Pigou-Dalton transfer principle. Let y1, y2, yn be an income distribution and consider two incomes y1, yi and yj. If yi is less than yj, the transfer of income from the not richer individual to the not poorer individual will be called a regressive transfer. The opposite of a regressive transfer is a progressive transfer. The Dalton principle states that if one income distribution can be generated from another via a sequence of regressive transfers, then the original distribution is more equal than the other. Formally, we say that I satisfies the Dalton principle if for every income distribution y1, y2, y3, yn, I, yj, yn is less than I of y1, y2, yg minus d, yj, d and yn for d greater than 0, where d is the amount of transfer and I is inequality. Next, we come to the Lorenz curve. We first rank the economic units according to the income or other measures of resources from the smallest to the largest. Then we plot the cumulative shares of the units versus the cumulative shares of these in terms of total income. In particular, the horizontal axis shows the cumulative percentages of the population arranged in the increasing order of income. On the vertical axis, we show the percentage of total income received by the fractions of the population. The convex shape of the curve thus drawn is called the Lorenz curve. For example, if 20% of the population receives 6% of the income, the point on the Lorenz curve, then it means that the poorest of 20% of the population are receiving just 6% of the total income. This also means that the richest of the 80% are receiving 94% of the total income, as you can see in the diagram. The greater the level of inequality, the farther is the Lorenz curve from the 45-degree line. In figure 1.2 lies to the left, in the figure L2 lies to the right of L1. Wherever, so we would expect an inequality index to indicate greater inequality in the case of L2, and this is called the Lorenz criterion, or the Lorenz dominance criterion. An inequality measure I is Lorenz consistent if for every pair of the income distribution of y's and z's, I of y1, y2, yn is greater than or equal to z1, z2, zn. The Lorenz curve of y1, y2, yn lies everywhere to the right of z1, z2, zn. It turns out that an inequality measure is consistent with the Lorenz criterion if and only if it satisfies all the four principles that we stated above: the anonymity, population, relative income, and Dalton principle. Therefore, the Lorenz criterion captures our four criteria in one statement and in graphical form. If the Lorenz curve of two distributions do not cross, then all inequality measures are consistent with the Lorenz criterion, yield the same ranking of these distributions. If two Lorenz curves cross, then the inequality measures that are consistent with the Lorenz criterion may yield different rankings. In this case, the Lorenz criterion does not apply, and we cannot go from one distribution to the other via a sequence of regressive transfers. Next is the complete measure of inequality. The Lorenz curve is regarded as a very nice instrument to measure degree of inequality, but at times the information needs to be presented in numbers. As compared to the picture, number is quantifiable and concrete. Additionally, judgments can be made on the basis of numbers when the Lorenz curve cross each other. Let us suppose that there are n individuals, m distinct incomes, and each income class j. The number of individuals earning that income is nj. Therefore, the total number of people would be given by sigma j ranging from 1 to m across nj. Now, we define the overall mean income as mu, which is equal to 1 upon n sigma j ranging from 1 to m across nj, where mu is the mean income. The complete measure of inequality that are often used are: 1. Range, the difference in the incomes of the richest and the poorest divided by the mean. Therefore, R is equal to 1 upon mu bracket ym minus y1. Ym is the richest and y1 is the poorest individual. Kuznets ratio, the ratio of the shares of incomes of the richest x% to the poorest y%. For example, the ratio of the income of the richest 10% to the ratio of the income of the poorest 40% can tell us something about the distribution when more detailed information is not available. The range of the Kuznets ratio are crude but nevertheless useful indicators of inequality when detailed data are not available. The mean absolute deviation express deviation, average deviation from the mean income as a fraction of the total income. M is equal to 1 upon n mu, sigma j ranging from 1 to m, n j modulo yj minus mu. M is the absolute deviation, n is the population, yj is the income group j, mu is the mean, nj is the number of individuals in income group j. Although it takes into account the entire income distribution, unlike the previous two, the mean absolute deviation is actually not a very good measure of inequality. It has one serious drawback. Moreover, it does not have the compensatory feature. The drawback is that often it does not satisfy the Dalton principle. To see this, take two incomes both either above the mean or below the mean. The regressive transfer between the two so that both incomes remain either above or below the mean as before, we leave the mean and absolute deviation unchanged. The coefficient of variation is the ratio of the standard deviation to the mean. So, C is equal to 1 upon mu under root the sigma of j ranging from 1 to m, n1 upon n bracket y j minus mu whole squared. N is the population, yj is the income in group j, mu is the mean, and nj is the number of individuals in group j. This measure satisfies all four properties and is Lorentz consistent. The Gini coefficient is widely used in empirical work. It takes the absolute difference between all income pairs and sums them up. The sum of the differences is divided by n squared, since there are n squared such pairs, by the mean, so that the coefficient is sensitive to not only changes in incomes and not to absolute changes, and by 2, since the each income pair appears twice. Therefore, G is equal to 1 upon 2 n squared mu sigma I ranging from 1 to m, sigma k ranging from 1 to m, nj nk absolute value of yj minus yk. Yj is the income group j and yk is the income group k. This measure satisfies all four properties, so it is Lorentz consistent. The Gini coefficient is the ratio of the area between the Lorentz curve and the 45-degree line to the area of the triangle below the 45-degree line. The last two measures of inequality, namely coefficient of variation and Gini coefficient, are Lorentz consistent. Therefore, both are satisfactory according to our criteria. We must note that both measures will give the same ranking as long as the Lorentz curve can be ranked. They do not cross. When the Lorentz curves cross, it is possible for the two measures to give different rankings. In such cases, we should rely not on one but a set of measures and probably study the Lorentz curves as well. If there is no Lorentz crossing, then Gini coefficient and the CV and other measures are Lorentz consistent. If Gini and CV do not agree, then there is a Lorentz curve crossing. If Gini and CV agree, there may be no Lorentz curve crossing. After this, we will briefly discuss about the trends in unemployment in India. Unemployment, as defined by ILO, is regarded as the happening of an event wherein people have no jobs and have actively looked for a job within the past 4 weeks, or unemployment can be regarded as a situation wherein workers in the labor force of a country who are eligible for working and willful want to work cannot find employment. Unemployment is a daunting problem for both developed and developing countries. India is one of those developing economies which continue to have a problem of unemployment and underemployment despite continuous policy emphasis and programs to eliminate the problem. Labor force participation rate. This rate points out to the percentage of the population which is already engaged in any kind of work and already ready to work in the light of any employment opportunity. There are around 469.96 million labor force constituting 43% of the India's total population, estimated to be around 1092.9 million at the end of 2004. As on 1st January 2005, that is. In the recent period, by the end of 2007, the labor force in India has increased to 471.7 million. The worker population ratio, this measures the present and the percentage of the persons who are actually worked or employed as a part of the total population. In India, there were about 459 million workers during 2004-5, consisting of 42% of the country's total population, and the workforce has increased to 461.4 million in 2007-8. The figure on unemployment rates in India by age group shows that the unemployment rate by 5-year interval age groups shows that the highest amongst the younger cohorts, especially 15 to 24 years of age. In other words, the incidence or the instances of those who are willing to work and available for work but unable to find work, or the higher amongst the young people below 30 years as compared to the seniors, that is 30 plus, and the highest is amongst the 20 to 25 years cohort. Now let us summarize what we have discussed in this module. As we all know, poverty, inequality and unemployment are intertwined. At this level, poverty in the country, most of the individuals are caught in a vicious circle from which they cannot escape. Poor people have lesser access to the healthcare facilities and decent level of education. This results in malnutrition and lowers the chance of getting employment at reasonable remuneration. This further raises inequalities and dissatisfaction amongst the population. Thus, each of these problems is bigger than the other, and it seems to be there, and it is an urgent need for the government to address these issues.